Let your conscience be your guide. So it has nothing to do with music. But I think about that a lot, behaving ethically and with kindness and generosity in all of this. In the end, the music and the movies, everything that we work on, our records, it's all going to kind of turn to dust, I think. But the relationships that we've forged with the people that we collaborate with, that's truly important to me. I realize now more than ever. Half the time, I mean, is the show good or is the show bad? I don't know. The people I'm working with are amazing. They're like family. I love it. They love me. It's great. We've worked so hard together. That's the stuff I'm taking away from everything.
Well, welcome to the podcast today. Today you're joined by Tom Third. This guy has scored over 250 hours of film and television. Tom, you've been nominated for Canadian Screen Awards. You've done, projects for HBO and all these networks. You're kind of that successful composer that when people think, oh my gosh, I want to be like that guy. And you've got your own studio, but as I was talking to you, you're also teaching students at the university now and still maintaining a crazy schedule with the music that you're writing for. I don't really call that your real job or what you love doing, but
yeah.
Anyway, so thank you for joining us today. Let's maybe just rewind the clock all the way back. So you've been doing this for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
And if you go back to when you were a high school, or maybe as when you were a student, did you think, oh, I want to be a composer? Or how in the world did you get from where you were as a teenager that probably knew everything and to where you are now, where you realize you don't know that much, and these students maybe know more about text than we do some days?
Yeah. I think my story is similar to a lot of people's. I had no idea that this was what was going to happen or where my career would lead. It was not the plan. I was always into music, obviously, and as a kid, and played in high school bands and stuff. But I was actually streaming into kind of an art career, like graphic design or something like that. And I went to art college, but I ended up studying film there, and I was still making music. And then I kind of got struck by lightning in a sense that I got a record deal really early on when I was young, based on stuff I was doing on sort of 4-track cassette. So not long after I graduated from college in like the early 90s, I got a record contract to sort of make electronica / hip hop / trip hop kind of records. And that's what I did in the 90s. And then I was sort of, my day job was sort of, working on film sets and stuff and doing all these other crazy odd jobs, whatever it was. And then I sort of landed in commercials, writing music, doing jingles for 10 years. And so that was what started paying the rent. So I was making these records and then doing jingles on the side, which was less common then, but I think it's more common now for a lot of people. And I just edged my way out of that kind of work into doing sort of longer stuff. So it went from commercials to doing short films to doing slightly longer films. And then I got a television series in the early 2000s, and that's where I'm still doing that stuff. So that's sort of where I landed.
Well, in television series, that's not an easy project. You're probably under the gun more than almost anything with all of the episodes you have to do, right?
You are correct. It is crazy. And when I started doing it, I thought, oh, it's just like the films I was doing, but longer. And I was really wrong about that. The pace is crazy. Everything about it is a bit hectic, but that's the good thing too. So anyway, I thought it was impossible to work as fast as I do now, but you figure out how to do it. There's all kinds of strategies. You just realize, oh, it's like running the 4-minute mile or something. People thought it was impossible, and then somebody did it. So yeah, you get into that pace and you learn how to write faster and trust your intuitions more readily.
Yep.
And I'm addicted to it. It's thrilling.
Well, and now my guess is you can't, what you're doing now, there's no way, had you been thrown into that 20 years ago, you would have gotten eaten alive. And, but all of the preparation and things that you did in the past probably prepared you to be able to handle what you're doing now, right?
Yeah. But no, the first couple of shows were really challenging and really a struggle. And I just barely got through them alive.
Hmm.
But that's like every challenge, right? Every first hard job is like that. So it wasn't like I walked in and went, "Oh, I aced that one." The first
No.
couple of shows were really brutalizing, and not sleeping because you're just behind, and it was just really mad. But you get better at it, you know.
No.
So
So if we were to be sitting in one of your school classes at the college
mm,
where you're at, I mean, what advice do you wish somebody would have given you back when you were in that stage of life that would have helped you maybe avoid some of the challenges you had to suffer through the hard way, maybe?
yeah, I think the big one, looking back on what I know I could have done better, which was collaborate more in that, like, ask for help when
Yeah.
I needed it. Now that I'm, mentoring people so much, I think, oh, they're doing exactly what I should have done, which is find people who already know how to do this thing and ask them how they do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's as simple as that, is really is seek out people who have braved those waters already. Because I was kind of, I was younger and I was a bit of an egomaniac, and maybe that's not changed, but I wanted to just do everything myself. I'm going to solve everything myself and rebuild this from scratch, even though it's been done a million times before. So I learned a lot, but it was trial by fire. And I think I could have made it easier if I just like looked around. But this is back, pre YouTube and pre internet, and almost. So there's way more avenues now for people to like just go online and watch a tutorial, which is what I do nowadays, when I want to learn something.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times when we think we know everything, I mean, there's definitely value in that struggle to figure things out. But if you don't have to struggle quite that hard, why would you want to as well?
Yeah. And within reason, and there's still a deadline and a delivery date. So your clients and your showrunners and your producers, they don't really care what you had to do to get to the finish line, just as long as you get there,
Right.
period. So if you get help or do this or whatever, they're good with that.
What mistakes do you see some of these students that are coming out of school? I think if you think about all these people that are in the classes, not all of them are going to be composers, and there's just a variety of careers. Even if I look back on, so I was a marketing major in school, and I think there might be two or three total people out of this 100+ person graduating class that maybe even does marketing. So what mistakes do you feel like people make when they're thinking they want to do the music? Is it just they take whatever comes in their lap, or do they look, oh, this will pay the bills, so they take that job and then they hate it forever and never do music? What mistakes do you see that are made often?
I think if anything, it's letting so I know I took everything, it's like this is just of all the kinds of work I can do. This is music. I'm gonna do commercials. I'm gonna just whatever comes my way, I'm doing it. And that served me really well. I met a lot of people that way and built networks and bridges towards projects I might not have worked on otherwise. I still volunteer on a ton of things just to build a relationship. Um, I think if anything, that if I see people that get a little bit too precious about the sanctity of their work,
Mm,
and that holds them back a little bit. I think if you can find a space where you're pretty chill about collaborating and taking notes and criticism from people and kind of let some of that go,
mhm.
that really can speed up the process, I think. I certainly see composers who are way more talented than I am, no question, who aren't working as much because they're a little more precious about their work, and so they're a little they're a little more high maintenance, we would say, in the business, right? They need to be
Yep.
coddled a bit more. So I think as soon as people can let some of that go a little bit and be a bit more zen, I think that's one of the big steps. That was the big step for me. How do I,
Yeah.
I didn't set out thinking, oh, I need to become more zen about all of this. But when I did and looked back, I thought, oh, that was really one of the paths that helped
Yeah.
me.
What What have been some of the ways that have been the most effective for you building relationships? Whether it's meeting directors or music supervisors. If you're a new kid in the school thinking, okay, I really want to go down the same path as Tom did, how do they go about that? Do they need to go spend a bunch of money on conferences? I mean, where do you find these opportunities?
Yeah, there's a million ways to do this without spending a bunch of money, right? There's so many kind of meetup groups, and I encourage people, like, I'm a member of the Composers Guild here in Canada. So, all the stuff you would have in the States, the Songwriters League, I can't remember the name of
Yep.
it right now, but those things, right? Join all those things. That number one is, I was not a joiner just by, I'm a composer for a reason, like a TV composer, because you work on your own most of
Yeah.
the time. And for me, that just suits the way I am. I'm just sort of introverted and I just like to focus and get in there. But I was being kind of harassed by the Composers Guild here, and I knew everybody, that was part of it. They said, "You got to join, we got to join, we need people like you." And so I finally did it. And then I thought, why did I wait so long to do that? I was hanging out with my fellow composers. It wasn't about, getting work so much, but it was about building up those social muscles and talking to people who had, made mistakes, and mentoring and learning from people who know way more than I do. So that's number one. That's the number one thing I tell people to do, is like find the collective, the groups, the organizations of like-minded individuals, and hang out with them. Go for coffee, go for beer, go to shows, whatever that is. Hang out with your peeps.
Yeah.
And then the conference thing, film festivals, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, that can help, for sure. But I think the big step is finding your tribe.
Yeah. So with the film festivals, for somebody who's brand new coming in, do you just go and buy a ticket to a show, or what? How do you get your foot in those doors to make it worthwhile going to some of the film festivals?
Yeah, I think the thing, yeah. I mean, so that's when the conferences, I think, are kind of useful. And a lot of them have sort of, free tiers and stuff for people to kind of just get in. There's a lot of stuff that's open to the public,
Yep.
just to come, you get a badge and don't have to buy the big fancy pass and all that stuff. But those things are good. Those are good sort of schmoozy kind of networking events. They're kind of social. And, you it's not so much about harassing the people up on stage and trying to hand them your card or something like that. It's really about meeting the people that are there in the audience. That's, I think, where a lot of the real sort of energy goes back and forth. And you talk to somebody, and this has happened to me, right? I've either moderated those things or been in the audience when it's been some famous person up there or something, but just talking to your neighbor and go, "What are you working on?" And like, "Oh, I'm working on a movie," and like, "I'm a composer." Those things really do happen. I have had the film I am scoring right now. I met the director at a film festival party.
No kidding.
And we were just hanging out. We had a lot in common, and she knew somebody that I knew, and I said, "I want to do your movie," and now we're doing it.
That's awesome.
So that face-to-face stuff really does help. And I know for a lot of us musicians, right, we're all kind of introverts. We're not necessarily the best promoters of ourselves. But that's a muscle that you can build up. And I swear, every time I go to one of these things and think, I'm not going to know a soul there, I'm going to feel like a jerk. And right, it's just like that party where you don't know anyone.
The imposter syndrome. You're not worthy to be here, right?
Exactly. But then you get there, you just like, let's do this. You get there, you walk in the room and you realize, okay, I'm not the only person here that doesn't know anybody. There's a whole bunch of people here that don't know anybody. And all we have to do is go to the food table and start talking. And the whole thing opens up, I find. So for me, that was the terror. Going to a party where I don't know anyone is just the kiss of death for me. I think I'm going to just die on the spot. I get there and then I know a ton of people, or I do within 10 minutes, because there's a million people in a similar situation.
Right. Well, I think a lot of times people confuse sales or just talking to other people as being salesy, and the fact, like you mentioned, that people are there, they're all feeling the same way, and they're probably relieved that Tom next to me opened up his mouth and said, hey, I'm Tom. How, here's what are you working on, and just be friendly. I think everybody wants a friend, and
100%.
uh,
100%.
I get my kids make fun of me sometimes because when I go on airplane rides, I love sitting next to new people and meeting interesting people. And as awkward as it is when you sit down, you have that, like, 10 seconds or 20 seconds where you can either be friendly with that person and they'll probably talk your ear off for 3 hours, or you might not even, they may not even look at you for 3 hours. It's much more pleasant when you at least can be friendly and, be a good human being and, get to know somebody and care about
Yeah.
them.
And just read the room, right? I'll walk
Oh
into
yeah.
one of these things and I'll see somebody, they're on their phone,
Yep.
right? They're scrolling. No one's really on their phone in that moment. They're faking it, right? Just like I am.
Like, get me out of here.
Yeah, you can go just find somebody that's scrolling on their phone and say, hi, how are you? And they will put their phone down. I certainly do, because you just feel like a jerk because you're on your phone in a social situation.
Yep.
So those, those conferencey type things, I think they're really pretty useful for meeting people.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like planting a seed. Like, it's not necessarily like you get a job out of those things, but you meet somebody that knows somebody. The more you do those things, the more seeds you are definitely planting. I have people coming back to me 10 years later going, remember we met at that thing and then we end up working together. And you're like, okay, that worked.
Yeah, it's funny how the seeds that are planted grow over time. And I've got stuff 15, 20 years ago that, I happened to put somebody in my phone, and all of a sudden they reach out, and sometimes I don't even remember them, but they apparently remembered enough about that interaction that they reached out, which is awesome.
Yep.
So awesome. I think really, if you look at what you're doing as a musician, you're serving and helping other people solve their problem. And when you realize you're actually helping and serving, I think that introvert in a lot of us that's scared to talk to somebody, it's not quite as scary to open up that mouth then, and when you're helping somebody, versus trying to push something on somebody that they don't want. And
I think that's really observant. I think that is true. And my experience is, I mean, in film and television, we're in post-production, we are the last step of the process. So we do nothing really but make things better. It's pretty rare that the music, spoils things.
Right.
We're usually making it better. We're making the director happier. Everyone's like, wow, yay. It's all sounding so great now. And so they look at us like magicians. Really, it's a mysterious, ethereal kind of substance that we work with, music. Yep. And we just come in and spread our fairy dust around and build a film score. And meanwhile, you're not sleeping, but it's I can say musicians are generally loved the world over, but in the film festival context, the composers are like, we're the partiers and the bohemians, and we make all these fabulous film scores, and there's a lot of cachet attached to it. There's no question.
And I think as I've been around the business longer, the more you realize, especially with TV series like you were talking about, everybody there's almost always going to be delays, right? And the last thing that typically gets filled in is the music. And maybe you were supposed to have weeks, but I have no doubt you had days or hours probably to do a score. And and you've still, as a musician, I think you just smile about it and you don't sleep for a day or two, and you deliver. And I think there's definitely appreciation when a director sees when they half understand what you went through. I don't think they actually understand what is taking place all the time, but there are some, I think, that do get it.
Yep. And certainly in television, people get it. All of the deadlines get crunched in every department, and ours get crunched quite a lot because there's a delivery right after hours, right? So everybody, so there's always that issue, but everybody is struggling and has issues and gets busy with stuff and whatever. And so you're not always doing 100%. Sometimes that one wasn't as good as that one.
Yep.
But I find the best showrunners, they know that, because it's the same with the episodes, and sometimes an actor isn't fully on, and all those kinds of things, and so it's really like a family thing. So if you do your best, this has been my experience, if you do your best and just give it your best effort, the people will go, you did your best, you ran out of time, that's fine, we get it, we're on to the next one.
Yep.
So maybe I've been lucky, but I find it quite a loving environment. Everybody's kicking butt. So you're kind of like the Marines there, and just everybody's taking care of each other, and we're going to get through this,
Absolutely. Interesting. Well, and so talk to me a little bit about how did you end up teaching at the university? You've been doing film scores. I mean, you've won awards for 20 years, big deal, Canadian Screen Awards and Gemini Awards. And, I know you won it was like a Volkswagen competition, I think,
Yeah.
What made you want to come back and teach students? And, did you have 30 students, 50 students, 100 students, 200 students?
It started small, and it got more and more. So I graduated from the Ontario College of Art, right? Your sort of standard art school here in Toronto. And they encouraged me to apply for a job teaching sound. I had taken sound there, and that was mostly the kind of work that I did. So a position came up where the teacher that taught me, one of my mentors, John Tucker, he retired from that job, and I took over his job. And I was 30. I was young. Wow. And so not huge classes, 10 or 15 students or something like that. And I just fell in love with that. Talking about work is like research. Having to articulate your process a little bit makes me a better writer, makes me a better composer, because I have to describe it to somebody who's coming to me for answers. So I have to research. So it's really strengthened my writing muscles for sure. Anyway, I fell in love with that job and was doing it for a long time. And then I had to take a break after about 10 years, but then I started mentoring somewhere else at another film school. And then I started at another university, and just in the last couple of years. And that's like a music and film history class. But cool. Wide open, so that there's no prerequisite. So it's not music students. It's a lot of mostly marketing, money, architects, engineers, biomed, doctors, everything.
So they're taking it for a fun class then.
Yep. It's a riot. It's really cool. So we get to just talk about art, and talk about movies and what they're into. But, I bring them through the canon, and, we come up from, Max Steiner in the 30s and end up with whatever, John Williams or something.
Yeah.
And, talking about it, the more I pontificate about it, the humbler I get, because there's of course so much to learn, right? And then there's just I'm better at my job as a writer and as a communicator. I think that's a bigger fringe benefit of that. Having to talk about it a lot has made me a better communicator with directors and stuff, because I can make them feel more at ease with the process that is absolutely vague and crazy, right? No
right.
No
with limited direction given,
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So this podcast is called the Successful Musicians Podcast, and so what would you say is your definition today? Having been in this business for 20 plus years now, what would you call success as a musician for you now?
It's a low bar as far as I'm concerned. It is, if you love music and you are playing, that's a success. Most people don't, even people that are really into music, or I played when I was younger and then I stopped playing or something like that. I feel like, okay, well, that's a plateau that you've reached. But if you want to keep sort of being in that joyful space, just playing is a huge part of it. Even just being a fan to me is just engaging with this art form. But I've started, jamming with old friends again, kind of on a weekly basis. Something I
Mhm.
haven't done for ages because I thought I was too busy.
Right.
And we've started doing that again. And the transcendent joy of just getting together with a bunch of friends, with no set list, and we don't play songs. We just wig out, right? There's a whatever we'll play, knocking on heaven's door or something like that. A couple of like really simple tracks. But the joy of that is so profound. I come home from those sessions, I'm like, I feel like I've been on the beach. I've had a vacation in Mexico for a week. It's just so what's therapeutic,
Yeah.
just to be in that space where you're truly in the moment. And it's the same for me when I'm writing quickly for television, but you get into that sort of psychological space where you're really truly living in the moment. There's no past and there's no future. You're just in the zone. It's pretty profound. It's one of the main, I think it's one of the big reasons people play in the first place.
Well, and I think that's some great insight. That's something that not very many people have said, but I think finding that joy in the, just playing and having this blank canvas to enjoy. A lot of times I do think people get too busy or too worked up in their, whatever the thing is that's taking the majority of their time and thought. And, taking 10 or, I've heard people say, take a 10 or 15-minute walk, and that's one of the most therapeutic things and best things you can do for your health. I think for sure music is probably even better than taking that walk. If you just put yourself at the piano or the guitar or whatever it is you play and enjoy it. I'd be curious to know if there's any studies out there that show the health of people that have taken 15, 20 minutes a day to enjoy the music instrument, and to see if they outperform or, are just happier in general. It would be a really interesting study.
Yeah. You would think, I bet you would agree, right? Off the top of our heads, does it feel like it's healthy and therapeutic? Yep.
Yep.
There's no question. Like, why would we keep doing it? It could be snowboarding, it could be a million things, or gardening, or all these things people do. But it does activate a part of my brain anyway that is like, I don't get to any other way. Like, there's no other way to get into that state. And I think a lot about when I was playing music as a teenager and hearing, chord progressions for the first time. I remember some of those moments. I remember hearing the blues for the first time when I was
like, whoa,
6 or 8 or whatever it was. And how mind-boggling that was. It was like seeing the color blue for the first time in your life. And I always think about, well, what is it I can do in my playing or my writing that will rekindle that emotion, that discovery of sound or a chord or a melody for the first time in your life. And it's less frequent, of course, as you get older, because you've heard a million kinds of music, but it still happens to me. I'll still see a film or hear a record and go, that is completely new to me.
Well, and then we start getting older and we start forgetting things, and then it still feels new, I think, sometimes to us, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. So a lot of the piano that I do, I've done a lot of sheet music over the years, and I would say my biggest audience is kind of that older lady group,
Right.
that are more almost retiring. And it's interesting to see how many people, when they don't have to do the work and maybe they're not as busy, how many people return back to the piano or whatever that instrument was, and have that desire to tap back into creativity. And just I think, unfortunately, I think it's a shame that we can't figure that out when we're in our 20s and 30s and continue that habit from a health standpoint.
And I think a lot of people are, there's this thing in the arts that's sort of performative, right? We have an expectation that if you're going to play or even, or play publicly or something, that you've got to be so good. And like, people are afraid to pick these things up again, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody's, on the fence about this, just like do it in private or whatever it is you need to do to just get back into it again. You don't have to tell anybody you're doing it,
Yep.
Just play in secret.
I did a concert a couple weeks ago, and it was my favorite thing of the night. It was fun interacting with the audience, and we had about 50 people and did this dinner. But at the end of the night, this guy came up, and he's probably in his mid to late 50s. And he came up to me and said, I wanted to come because I got your easier piano hymn book, and I'm not a good piano player, and I've been able to sit down and play out of that. But he said, to me, this is what really just blew my mind. He said, I loved that you messed up at the beginning, during your songs. It gave me hope that I can do it too, and made me realize, you know what, if even these great people that are supposed to be the performers and professionals mess up, then it's totally fine for me to mess up too. And he said it just was like a game changer for him. But for me as an artist, I was embarrassed, I guess, that I really kind of messed up on a song pretty bad.
We all
It
do
was
it.
not good. I apologized even before it was a request somebody done, and I'd written this tune. If you took Moonlight Sonata from Beethoven, and I thought, okay, what if I were to score a scene where Beethoven's losing his hearing, right? And so
Right.
it's got this Moonlight Sonata, but it had multiple sharps and some flats, and it just sounds really cool. But I just finished it like 3 days earlier, and it was not polished at all.
Right.
And to the point where it's everybody loved it. But what was funny is that was their favorite thing that I got comments from people on, and
Yeah.
I did a terrible job of performing it, and I think
Interesting.
a lot of it made me remember that people love the flow.
Versus nerding out about music or treating it like a rock video and they're going to put in their face.
Yeah.
In the end, the music and the movies, everything that we work on, our records, it's all going to kind of
Check out some of the projects you're working on. Is there a website you'd like to send them to? Where should they go? We'll put this in the show notes for you as well.
Yeah, it's just tomthird.com. It's
Okay.
basically where I, everything comes up. If people search my name, all the nonsense comes
Well,
up, as far as I can tell.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for just sharing your experiences and advice. I know you will have helped multiple people that listen to this down the road, whether it's, in the future as well. This is going to be around for a long time. And I think you've definitely left some gold nuggets and words of wisdom that will help a lot of people. So hopefully if this has impacted you, share it with others that are in the music business or just need to hear this interview, because this has been a great one. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Real pleasure. Had a great time.